Let's do this. It's the Cult of Hockey podcast. By the faithful and for the faithful, I'm Kurt Leavins from the Cult of Hockey at the Edmonton Journal. Joining me tonight, a dear friend of the Cult of Hockey, knowledgeable hockey watcher, writer, and critic, Kevin McCurdy. Kevin, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well, Kurt. How are you doing?
Not bad, thank you. You know, that was a game 82, wasn't it? It was.
Yeah. A game of hockey was played, I guess. We can call it that.
There was a score, there was a result. Yes. Well,
Not a
I
whole lot
guess
else.
with at the risk of stealing someone's good thing tonight, I'll hazard a guess off the top that both of us would have picked, for the love of God, nobody get hurt, and
Yeah.
and and nobody did for a change.
Yeah, I said to as soon as Connor got his 100th point, someone wrap that man and put him in a shipping container and get him out of there.
Chain him to the bench, right? That's
Yeah.
but competitors, hey,
Yeah.
they won't take a night off. It's okay. Well, a nice win, a 3-0 win to end off the season. The playoffs are next. We can talk about the playoffs at the end of the podcast, but let's break down this game tonight. It's our usual two good things, two bad things, two numbers podcast. Let's start with the good things. And Kevin, let's start with you.
I'm going to take Ty Emerson for my good thing tonight. Another goal and assist against his former team. Game 80 nothing burger of the season. So, you got to pick the wins where we can find them. And Ty's been playing. He's found a way to turn it on in the past couple of games. I'm pretty happy about that. So we'll see if he can continue that into the playoffs.
Well, he played a lot tonight, 22-28, which I believe is a season high for him. As you mentioned, the goal and assist, he was +2. And when you really look at how he performed, and often for me to do that, I like to look at the high danger scoring chances, 5-on-5. And in that respect, he was 3-4-1 against.
Yeah.
So you know what? If you're playing higher up in the lineup than you normally do, which he was tonight, um, and way more in terms of minutes, like 10 minutes more on average than he normally gets a night. Um, that kind of results pretty solid, and very good chance that this guy, who we probably didn't expect maybe to be in the starting six for game one of the Stanley Cup playoffs, he almost certainly is now with the injuries that the Oilers are facing. That's a pretty decent warm up game for him to have before they drop the big puck on either Sunday or Monday night.
That was a real nice shot he put in too. Like just seeing a shot inside the left post. You can't, what's not to like?
Yep, no, absolutely. Um, my good thing also came from the Oilers' blue line tonight. And on a night when you allow, I think was it just 17 shots that they allowed?
Yeah.
Pretty solid defensive effort. So I talked about the injuries. Obviously, Matthias Ekholm is not expected to play at least in the first round. And the fact that we didn't see Troy Stetcher tonight concerns me more than a little bit, because I was already worried when he would be pressed into service as your 60 in the playoffs. Well, now it looks like he might not even be available. So watching the defensemen that were playing tonight, it gave me a little bit of comfort to see the performances tonight of Cam Dineen and Josh Brown. Uh, One guy who I think we thought was going to be in the Oilers lineup more regularly this season and wasn't, which is Brown, and one guy who I didn't think we'd see at all with the Oilers this year, and we have, and has delivered a couple pretty good results in the games that he's played. Josh Brown tonight was really physical. Officially only credited with 3 hits, but I recorded 4, and 4 heavy ones, including 2 on Delandria in the same shift. I'm sure that after
That man
after
had a rough night.
oh man, after he picked himself up after the second one, I think he thought, "Isn't the season over yet?" Like it was. So you know what, Josh Brown and a couple other plays. Including one where he boxed out a Sharks player very nicely with a loose puck bouncing around in front of the crease, and he cleared his man away nicely. Um, at the end of the night, he had 3 hits, he had 3 shot blocks. solid as a rock back there. I think we can agree if Josh Brown plays a playoff game for the Oilers, something else has gone wrong. But hey, at least he can step up like that and look like a NHL defenseman, which he did tonight. For Cam Dineen, it's funny. I had this conversation on the podcast after our last game. This is a guy who is known for being a really good skater, really good with the puck, but a bit of a pending disaster in his own end. Although his defense, I'm told by people who watch him in the AHL on a regular basis, that he has really turned it around in terms of his two-way play this year. Well, tonight certainly no issues on the defensive side, and offensively, um, Dineen had 4 shots, 4 shot blocks, and I mean missed his first NHL goal by a fraction of an inch. Broke in on a nice takeaway by Kapanen, who fed him in front, and the shot on goal was dangerous enough. But then the rebound came off, and I was really impressed with the patience that he exhibited on the rebound. Really took his time, pulled it around the goaltender, and flung it at the net. And I thought for sure it was going in, but it didn't. Glanced off the puck and out. But from both
He got
Brown
hooked
and
out of
Dineen,
that
I
though,
thought,
didn't he?
what's
He
that?
got hooked. He got hooked out of that, didn't he?
He did, and eventually drew a power play
Yeah.
on the
So I
play.
mean,
Yes,
the man's was robbed. I think more than anything. I think he had it, but
I
he'd
think
had
so.
real patience on that play. It was really nice to watch.
Didn't he? Yeah, really nice play. Clearly, the guy is not only moves his feet really well, he does have confidence with the puck. There's skills that he does bring to the team, even though he's not typically somebody you'd prefer to have in your top six. But at least with Brown and Dineen, they've got guys with a little bit of NHL experience who, if they need to go to them in the playoffs, well, at least they've got that bit of experience, and they're going in with a game under their belts where both guys will be feeling that they played up to their capability.
Absolutely.
Bad things were a little bit hard to come by tonight because, frankly, even though it wasn't the greatest hockey game in the world, and I don't think anybody expected it to be, the Oilers also didn't make a lot of mistakes. They for the most part locked it down defensively. So I think both Kevin and I had to scratch our heads a little bit for bad things. Why don't you take a shot at it first, and then I'll see if I can come up
I'm
with something after that.
I don't think I even have a bad thing. And my only passing critique, I think, even of that game, aside from them running around a bit in their own zone, was I think it's pretty apparent that Quinn Hudson, although a very good player, is going to need some time to cook in the AHL before he's ready. I get the idea that he doesn't necessarily think he has as much time as he does. And um, which is sort of a comment you made before the podcast started. But I definitely think that that's the right assessment here. That he's just he has more space than he thinks. He needs to learn to use it, and he's going to take some seasoning time to get to be an NHL player. But I would not at all be surprised, based on what I've seen, to see him get to that point.
Yeah, it's that old saying with rookie players, they often hear footsteps when there aren't any. And I think we saw that in a couple plays along the wall tonight where he had lots of time to get the puck up and out of the zone and didn't because he just rushed it.
Yeah.
But it looks like the kid has good instincts though, moves really well.
Yeah.
He was net front. I think it was on the 2-0 goal where
Yeah,
he
he
was.
was. It was him and Jones just sitting there waiting for Henrique's pass, and
Yeah.
I think he would have had that if Max Jones didn't immediately snipe that home.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. So I mean, arrows up when you go from the Frozen Four to the NHL in just a matter of nights. It's a pretty big step. Sure, nice to see the kid's family in the crowd. There was a whole line of Hudson's up there watching and had their Oilers gear on already. So, hey, good on the young man for making it to the show this early in his career. And certainly it looks like the Oilers have an interesting prospect there. But I agree with your assessment. It looks like a good solid year in Bakersfield is exactly what the doctor ordered for him. So,
Yeah, I think so too.
All right. Numbers. Oh, sorry. I should really go with my bad thing. We've already been joking about it a little bit, which is the fact that this was just kind of a meh game. It was the typical game 82. And I guess that's where my concern comes in because this team, even though, hey, they won 7 of their last 10, that's nothing to sneeze at. But with all the injuries and guys in and out of the lineup, and let's be honest, a little bit of load management going on there too, which is perfectly fine. I have no issue with that. But this game tonight out of 10 was maybe a 4, if I'm being generous, in terms of intensity. I mean, might
Yeah,
have even been a 3. The Oilers certainly were the better team and deserved to win and played well enough to win. But between now and Sunday, Monday night and game 1 against the Los Angeles Kings, somehow they're going to have to turn that dial from a 4 to a 10
yeah,
because we all know when you get into the playoffs, bam, everybody's going at full speed, high intensity. And there's just a big gap between what this game was and what that's going to be. And so it's just a mild concern I have in the background. I have no doubts that a veteran team like the Oilers have figured out how to get themselves up for big games. But in a game where there weren't a lot of negatives, that's the one niggling thing at the back of my mind was, man, they're really going to have to crank it up to get to game 1 level from what this was tonight.
yeah. The only upswing that I see is Connor is doing Connor things again, and
Hey,
Connor's been doing more Connery things that he's done, I'd say, in months, and I would argue basically at all this season. Um, the man is still incredible, right? Like he is a fabulous player to watch, but we're so spoiled that we've seen Connor when he transcends, and we've seen Connor that's just either injured or maybe a bit indifferent. That doesn't really come across as his style. I think injured is probably more likely. And, rumor has it that he's dealt with a fairly significant injury for some time. And this is the first time that I see that twinkle, the extra gear that he needs to just burn guys. And I'm pretty excited to see what he does in the playoffs because I think he's absolutely ready to go.
well, Ira Cooper and I were talking about this after the last game. I think it can be fairly argued that the Oilers ran out of gas in Game 7 last year.
Yep.
Um, so if this year, if several of their key players have rest, even if they might not be 100% healthy, who is this time of year, but if they're rested, look out. And McDavid certainly looks like he's got gas again.
Yeah, I think that Four Nations was kind of a kick in the ass for them, if I'm being honest. So, um, it's good. The only thing I'm concerned about is Ekholm, but if there is any truth to Knobloch's phrasing, which is that basically everybody on IR is going to be ready to go game 1 except Ekholm, that's a whole lot of firepower coming off the bench.
It sure is. And I was thinking about that very comment today. And it's like, almost every team is going to have one player that isn't ready to go yet. And so while you'd certainly prefer it not to be a comb, he's such a key to the blue line on this team. Other teams are going to have to overcome injuries as well. Um,
Yeah.
but what we had been watching was just a parade of guys to the medical room. I haven't seen this in a decade. Um,
Yeah, I know TD4s and co took quite a bit of heat, and I think that this is just the rooster coming home to roost after several healthy seasons. And for whatever reason, the hockey gourds didn't like us as much this year, and those years happen, right? Like they're just that's the statistical return to the mean that is going to happen over time, and hopefully they've managed to get most of it out of the system. That virus that went through the room was absolutely horrendous from what I've heard, and was causing some major gas for some of their core players. So if these guys are at all as ready to go as I think they are, and are as hungry as I think they are from Connor's comments at the end of last season, uh, man, that's a monster.
Yeah, the thing I agree with all that. And what I'll add to it is I think some people maybe underestimate not just how hard physically, but how hard mentally it was. A, going to game 7 and losing.
Mm-hmm.
And then B, for the guys involved in the international tournament, just how mentally taxing that was. Because talk about a pressure cooker
Yeah.
where you had to turn the switch on instantly with guys you weren't used to playing with.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people might underestimate just how as much as they loved being there and wanted to do it, just how much mentally that will take out of a player.
And yeah, people have to also remember too that the Oilers did not have much of a summer, right? Like I am certain that there are injuries that were from the playoffs that lasted well into this season. Just from guys not getting enough of a break to let their bodies heal. And Connor, clearly took it easy for most of the summer. He said as much. He didn't skate, I don't think, for 5 weeks. So um, for him to miss that much ice, that tells you that the team was being cautious with something, and he was being cautious, and he was cognizant of the fact he needed to recharge his batteries in a major way if he was going to have another impact year. And we saw some of that obviously have some issues earlier on in the season. I'm glad to see him back up to full kilter now.
Yeah, I'm with you. Okay, let's move on to our numbers. On a night like this, there were a lot of fun numbers floating around. Which one did you pick out of the bunch?
I took Connor McDavid, surprise, surprise, scoring his 100th point for his 8th time. You know, doing better than the Toronto guys, anyways. So
Tell me, can you remember the stat you told me before we started the call
I
tonight
think
about
I think he has more 100-point seasons than all of the active Toronto guys put together,
that's
which
too
is
bad.
that's some wild thing.
So he only trails two players in history now, right? Gretzky and Lemieux are the only two that he trails in that respect.
Yeah,
And
that's kind of a nothing burger list, right? Nothing to worry
yeah,
about.
and tied with Marcel Dion, who for my books was the greatest player to never win a Stanley Cup.
Yeah. Let's hope Connor manages to pull out of this one.
Yeah, exactly, right. So
Yeah.
well, it was pretty cool to see him get it tonight. I have to think that was a factor in him playing at all tonight, even though he'll be the first guy to say that he's not in it for that stuff. But if you're a competitor and you know that point 100 is on the horizon, it's natural to want it, right? I mean, I don't
He
think
still
there's
put on
anything
a
wrong with
show,
that.
right? Like
Yeah,
even in a nothing burger, he went out and put a couple of really good shifts in, and he wasn't doing it like he does when he has to play 28 minutes a night to claw the Oilers back into a 2-1 victory, right? Like it's not like that, but he did put on a show for a couple of shifts. He got his point and he got out, and you know, if I was him, I wouldn't want a year with a two-digit number in it if I could avoid it, right? Like,
right. Well, you talk about putting on a show. That one dash he had down the middle of the ice in the third period, and I think Thrun was the defenseman that was back for San Jose, and you could kind of see him going, "Oh shit!" like here he comes. And you know what? The kid actually made a nice play on Connor and just got a stick on him at the last minute and prevented him from walking through everybody. But he was cooking with gas, man, right downtown. It was
yeah,
quite a thing to behold.
yeah. I always was impressed by Ryan McLeod and how fast he was and how underrated his speed was. But Connor, like when Connor decides that it's time to go, nobody can touch him. Like
Yep.
he's by far the fastest player in the league, and that's saying something because I've seen some of McKinnon's rushes. So
Yep. Well, if we go from the fastest player of the league to maybe the slowest player of the league, we can talk about my number.
go for it.
My number is 68. 68. Corey Perry with his 19th of the season tonight ties Rick Middleton, who was just a terrific hockey player for the Boston Bruins back in the 70s and early 80s. Ties Middleton for all-time NHL career regular season goals with 448. I don't know about you, Kevin, but I know a lot of people in the offseason kind of blinked twice when the Oilers so quickly signed Corey Perry again. And I know even myself and David, your dad, often talked about, well, maybe it would be best if they only play him 40 games and just keep him fresh. Well, hell, he went on and scored 19 goals. Like that's a really impressive season for a 22-year-old, let alone a 39-year-old who doesn't have quick boots anymore. Now you might say, well, 19 came in an empty net. Well, they all look the same on the stat sheet. Um, but man, what an incredible contribution. And I think it's fair to say an unlikely offensive contribution he has made this season. You always, can talk
He's
about
got
the intangibles that Corey brings in terms of his leadership and his wormness and all that kind of stuff. But this is a guy who only averaged 12 minutes a night.
Yeah, I think he's Corey still has it. What the incredible thing about Corey Perry is he's such a fantastic hockey player and he has such a good hockey mind that he's adapted his game about 5 times from the time he was 20 until what he is now. And he's been able to stay relevant just by sheer cleverness and determination. And that's one of the reasons that he's the rare 40 club. I honestly would not be surprised to see them offer him another year at, just over league minimum again. Like if you get 20 goals out of that, you get 15 goals out of that, that's money well spent.
100%.
And he is clearly someone who's respected around the room, and he teaches a certain gamesmanship that very few can do unless you have a Perry or a Marchand or somebody like that, right? Like it's an important, intangible.
I saw him on the ice a couple shifts tonight with young Hudson, and I thought that's a good idea.
Yeah, just weld those two together next year and let them
right?
go. Yeah.
All right. Any other final thoughts, either about this game or the path forward, Kevin?
I think I'm glad that we're done with the 82 game slog. It's time for some real hockey, and I'm still a little bit miffed by Danault's comments the other day, and I'm sure the team has got that stabbed with a hockey blade into the bulletin board, and yeah. When some guy with 8 goals is beaking you off about icing your B team, that's kind of an egregious overstep.
Yeah, I think so. I think I'm confident that both Connor and Leon are going to be Connor and Leon.
Yeah.
What I'm looking forward to is finding out if Frederick and Nurse are in the lineup.
Yeah.
And if they are, what do they look like? Because if either one of them are close to the top of their game, to me, that's a series changer against a team like LA, which is a physical team.
Yeah. No, Nurse has had his best. I was talking on Low Tide show about that earlier today. That Nurse has had his best season since his contract season, and it's not particularly close. I know the analytics aren't
right.
Yeah, and I know the analytics aren't, they're not that amazing. You're like, well, Kevin, this guy makes 9.25. Yes, I know he makes 9.25 million, but like I say over and over and over again on Twitter, once you decouple Nurse from the contract and you look at the player aside from the contract, you have a solid, reliable defenseman who will most of the time make the right decisions and not get burned as much as people thinks he gets burned. He does some dumb shit. Like, don't get me wrong, but it's he also is a clever player. He's a fantastic skater. Like, he is a gifted skater.
He is.
And I wish he would use his offensive sense a bit more and, less muffin launchers. But, I'll take that he's playing at a level he hasn't played to in some time. And again, I think there was a legitimate injury concern there with Nurse, 2 seasons ago and last season with a core injury that was nagging him. And this is the first we've seen him healthy since his contract here.
Yep, for sure. And as you mentioned to me, it also doesn't hurt looking ahead that Stuart Skinner finishes off a pretty uneven regular season for him with a shutout. That can't hurt the old confidence.
No, he made some tricky saves tonight. And he wasn't particularly tested. They weren't generating a lot, but there was some plays that were real zingers. And I was pretty happy with his performance. I know there was a little bit of concern about that buzzer beater attempt there, and that redirected. And I have to go watch that goal again, but it redirected pretty significantly, not like you're 2 inches to the left. So I think that people need to just give Skinner a chance for the first round, because I think that he is primed and ready to go on one of his, rather frequent bouts of ridiculous goaltending. I
I
hope
have a
I'm right.
I have a general rule when it comes to goaltending, which I generally know nothing about.
Yeah,
But my general rule is I don't blame goaltenders on goals that don't count.
yeah.
Seems simple to me.
Hey, man, it's a shutout, so that's good enough for me.
You got it. Okay. Well, why don't we wrap it up? I got to say, Kevin, what a treat it is to have you on the podcast with me tonight. For obvious reasons, not only the warmth that we have in our hearts for your dad, but you're a real smart hockey watcher. I really enjoy following you on Twitter and your observations of the game and the Oilers. So it's great to spend time with you on the podcast to be able to swap some of those back and forth. So thanks for being with us. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, man, absolutely. I like being here. It's my dad would be proud and happy that we're continuing down this path. So, um, you know, I, he loved doing these with you guys, and the feeling's mutual. Let's put it that way.
All right. We'll have a great night, and you and me and David will talk sometime around game one.
Sounds good. See you guys soon.
You betcha. All right. And in the meantime, and in between times, that is another edition of the Cult of Hockey podcast.